Hello, Brave Masters. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Brave Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Jena Rodriguez, and I am your business and brave strategist, helping you unleash your ultimate potential and profit from the business that you love. I'm super excited to bring you another amazing guest. And I just want to remind you, yeah, she's smiling. Just hold on, I'll get you introed in just a second. Is just remind you that if you get a big takeaway from this or an aha or something that just really resonates, please give us some feedback. Would love to hear from you. Giovanna and I both would love to know what your thoughts are and how this is helping. So without further ado, welcome, Giovanna. How are you? I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and honored that you're having me on this show. I'm really pumped. I'm pumped.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
We are ready. We are so ready. I'm so excited. Yeah, and I just have to say thank you again for having me on your show. And I knew from meeting you at that moment, I was like, oh yeah, this girl's going to be on mine.
Right? I know. It was like super fun. We clicked. Soul sisters.
Yeah, perfectly. So but without delaying, let's make sure that they know who you are, what your business is all about. So if you could do a quick intro, that would be awesome.
Cool. Well, I'm Giovanna. I'm a transformational coach and leadership coach, and I help support women who are wanting to get to their next level, and they're either recovering from or almost at the edge of that burnout place. So we do a lot of stuff around their business, but a lot of relationship coaching. So my specialty is getting into relationship systems, and so coaching them to get to that next level, whatever that is for them. I have a personal mission that I want to unsettle women all over the world. And that means that any place that you're settling in your life, any place that needs that next level up, any place where you're hiding, usually comes to light. And so we dive right into that together.
I love that. And that's what resonated with me when I met you is just, number one, like I connect with that so much, just even in my own work and with people. And then just, being a woman, being a leader, being, and finding that, that unsettling and not settling for status quo, et cetera. So tell me more about what you find when working with people or that it's like, how do you know you're actually at burnout? Because I think there's a subtleness to it at times. I mean, you can have the 2x4. You're going to have the like, oh yeah, rock bottom, you're in the emergency room kind of burnout. But what is the subtleness of it that you start to see?
Yeah. Well, first, I actually want to take a step back when I talked about unsettled. And, settled is a paradox, right? So we want to get to a place where we feel settled within ourselves, but not where we are settling for something external less than, or even less than within ourselves. So there's a paradox in that word, and that is the precursor to the burnout. So when we are when I see people, and this is part of the signs, right? When your ambition, your drive, and your push is coming from a place that is, let's say, unhealthy or toxic or an external driver, right? So like external validation, I'm not good enough. I've got to prove this to you, or I've got to prove this to myself, or that real push. Those are the first indicators that potentially burnout could be on your horizon. So that's the first thing. And so there's a place where we could be unsettled where, we just decide that we want to strive for the next best thing. And it's not coming from a place of pushing against something. Like I want to push against, my whole thing was, I don't want to be like my mother and I don't want to have that life. And I want to push it. And as I pushed against it, I pushed so hard that I ended up getting myself into massive burnout. So you want to actually look at what your drivers are. And so drivers are really important. And most of us, unfortunately, are coming from a place where we have this external validator or driver that is like the bug in the ear, right? It's just like, do it better, stronger, faster. And it's also cultural. It's part of our culture as well.
Yeah.
So signs and symptoms that you're headed there is really that, like, look at what's driving and pushing you. I always say this, if you're bumping up against something, if there's a detour sign in the road, most of us are taught, especially in our like very North American Western culture, right? Is like, well, just push through it.
Just roll over it. What do you mean?
Yeah, just plow through it.
Yeah.
And really what we need to start learning is getting in touch with our own inner compass and our own inner knowing. and actually seeing that as just exactly what it is. Like, it's a detour. Don't go this way, go that way. And then life becomes easier, and we don't have to get to a state of burnout. We don't have to be misaligned with our goals and ambitions, and be it relationship goals or be it business goals or whatever. So
yeah,
I hope that answers your question.
No, I love that. Yeah. I just wanted you to kind of like go down that hole, right? Go there. And, cause I appreciate your distinction about what settle or unsettle means. And, cause it can be different for everyone, just like brave is different for everyone. But it's this sense of, and I'm transparently, I've been there. I've been in the push. I've been in the, like, what am I running from instead of what am I running to? Right. And being able to actually internally discern the difference, like being able to be in the discernment of that, because I think that's a quiet space that for me, I wasn't getting to. And then when I started getting quieter, meditating, doing my practice in the morning, like getting to a place where I could actually hear myself and not hear the ego screaming at me and the resistance screaming at me and all of that, that then discernment started to get actually easier. So I don't know if you can speak to that, or what you find or what you offer people as a practice to figure that out, like to start to notice the difference between a detour and a green light. You know?
I mean, yeah, we're both Course in Miracles students, right?
Yeah,
and right. So I rely heavily on the principles of the Course, and I always credit the Course for saving my life, literally. So it is exactly what you said. It's the ability. It's not, actually, I'm going to backtrack. It's not even the ability. And there is some skill set to it, but it's actually more subtle than that. It's an invitation.
Yeah,
right? It's the invitation to yourself and giving yourself permission to slow down enough, because oftentimes with the striving and the achieving and the ambition, hand in hand, bedfellows, is that fear of slowing down. It's the fear of I don't have time to meditate, right? I don't have time to meditate. And there's that quote, I think it's, is it Osho or the Dalai Lama? I can't remember who it is, but it's like, if you only have, 10 minutes a day to meditate, then you should meditate for an hour. Like something along those lines, right?
Yeah, completely.
So it is about that invitation to yourself and giving yourself permission to say, I need this time, recognizing the importance of it. And then comes the skill set of being able, because a lot of people say to me, a lot of my clients are like, I don't know how to meditate. And, and really what that is, what I've learned to, when I hear, I don't know how to meditate, really what that is resistance. Right?
Yeah, completely.
Because we're afraid of what we'll hear when we slow down. We're afraid.
I was.
I used to think like, what if Spirit's agenda is not mine? What if she wants me to do something different and I don't want to do it? And it's like, which is ludicrous, because there is no separation. And so, when you sit down, your internal voice, your higher consciousness, your higher knowing, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it is an alignment to what is good for you, but also to your desires. So you're not going to go get something that like, oh, I didn't want that kind of thing. And so there's that. And so the invitation starts to cultivate the relationship. And if you don't have like the triad or the paradigm that I teach from is relationship to self, source, and other.
Got it.
And those have to be in balance. And so if we're just in relationship with other could be job, other could be person, other could be shopping, could be an addiction, right?
Yeah.
If we're too in that other relationship, then we're neglecting the self and we're completely disconnected from source, right? If we're too in source and we're neglecting the other two, then we're like not grounded, we're airy-fairy, we're like just spiritually bypassing life. And of course, if you're too into yourself and you're too self-absorbed, well, we know the consequences of that. You're neglecting people and your connection to source. So all of this is an interplay. And this is why I coach around, I'd rather call myself a transformational coach than a business coach, although my clients would probably call me a business coach because they come to me for that. But we coach around this relationship system.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, the invitation, just like you said, like invite yourself to get quiet and see what happens. Like, don't be afraid.
Like go down, like create the adventure for yourself. Because I too, I mean, like you said it, there was this fear overlaying the get quiet. I didn't really notice it, because of the ambition and the push and all of that. And when I got quiet, of course, it's just like anything, with practice or just a let go, a surrender, then you can, you kind of prove it back to yourself that it's like nothing to be afraid of. And that it's actually more beautiful and more powerful and more, completely like gift giving, than anything else you could possibly imagine. And so I just think we need to talk about that more. Like, I think this is like why I had you here. Cause I was like, oh yeah, this is a conversation we got to make bigger and keep spreading the word.
Keep talking about it. Yeah.
Keep talking about it.
Yeah. Well, you talk about brave, right? And it's brave to start to listen to the still small voice, because there is that layer of fear. And you just reminded me, like just this week, I just wrote a blog post about spiritual surrender, and it's not what you think it is. Like, people think that they have to give up something, that it's actually disempowering to practice spiritual surrender, but actually it's such a powerful choice.
Yeah. It's the opposite.
It is the opposite. And actually the article is surrender versus submission. Right. And so there's bravery in that, because you noticed yourself, like, it's kind of scary to see what happened when I had to listen to the crazy, right? Inside. Right. And
now
what's going to happen? Yeah.
I'm not crazy. That thing's crazy over there, that voice, but this isn't crazy. That's right. My truth voice, my inspired voice. And it's funny because more recently I've actually, I keep adding to the definition of brave, because basically everything people say, because I ask, what does brave mean to you a lot of times? And it's all yes, it's all accurate. There's no, because it's all subjective and it's all, whoever, whatever you believe, right? And how you bring brave to you. But one of the things I saw even more so this year, because my evolution of the conversation of brave has gotten bigger and better, and all that, and was brave is about facing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, there you go. So you bringing this up, I mean, I'm like, yes, that is what brave is. It's about facing yourself. That is the ultimate in brave. It's not about
it's
just
that dark night
of
the soul. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's facing all the stuff. So here's the thing, like Carl Jung said, unless we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to run our life, and we will call it fate. So it is a very brave, powerful choice to face yourself, I call it the ugly, right? Yes. Like, and none of it's ugly, right? Like, I don't want to put a judgment on it, because I teach people to not judge it, but it's like facing that part of you and understanding that none of it's bad. It was all there to serve you. Right. One of the baseline work pieces that I do with people is learning to, what I say is our mission in life, which is to learn to reparent the child within, right? Learn to reparent that inner child. Right. And in order to do that, we have to face all these places where we judge ourselves. And that goes back to the burnout thing, right? Like, if we're judging ourselves and we're judging a piece of ourselves, we are not whole. We're not wholeheartedly living. And so we're running away from this thing. Yeah. And that can lead to so many layers of burnout, right? Like, there's mental burnout, there's physical burnout, there's spiritual burnout. And sometimes they all happen at the same time. Most of the time they do.
Yeah. Kind of like the trifecta. For sure. Yeah. So, so this is good. So I'm curious, you said two things about you. One is you saw the push that you were doing against, like, be like mom, right? That resistance. That
was one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I have that one. I can relate to that, meaning, like, just from a place of our lifestyle, my lifestyle growing up was like not mine. Like, that is not what I want for the rest of my life or for my children. So I kept pushing to go the other direction. And yes, my life definitely looks different than how, my life looked growing up, but it's not it's still ego driven. It's still, the resistance. And so that was one thing I wanted to learn more about, and like, if you could share a little more of your journey through that and figuring that out. And then you said the course saved your life. So I want to come back to that.
Yeah. And they're tied in. Yeah. I knew you were going to go there next. You went right to the juice. Yeah. So they're tied in together. So okay. This is such perfect timing, because I literally just got off a group coaching call with some clients, and I literally just brought this up to one of my clients.
This is how it works.
Like, so perfect. So, I didn't know consciously. There was a part of me that was conscious of it and a part that was unconscious.
Correct.
But I knew at a very young age that I looked around. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and I come from an Italian family. So all the cultural implications of that, right? Like you get married, you have the babies, you go live in the burbs, you have a job, you save for retirement, like that trajectory.
Yes.
And I remember being really young. I was 14 when my third of the sisters got married. And I remember having this moment of like, is this it? Like, do I have to do this now? Like, right. It's okay for you to do it, but do I have to do this now? Like, and I was only 14, but I had that moment of like, not for me, not for me. And so that came, I think, from a very intuitive, guided place. It was very spontaneous. It was very like, I didn't have any reasoning behind it. Right. But it grew into rebellion, and it grew into like pushing against. And of course, what you resist will persist. And so I found myself engaged, almost married, living in the burbs with a wonderful man. Like he was great. I had a beautiful house. I had all the stuff, and I was tremendously unhappy. I was unhappy with myself. I had gained 40 additional pounds in that relationship, and with my mom being ill. And so there was all these things happening in my life. And I literally woke up one day about a year after my mother died. Well, it was less than a year after my mother died. And I realized I've been pushing up against this my entire life. And I ended up doing the exact same thing. Like I was literally on her trajectory.
Wow.
And I needed to make a change. And so I set off on a journey, and let me tell you, it was awkward before it was elegant. Like like more breakups, more bumps and bruises, and I'm writing a whole book about it right now. But
awesome.
Yeah, there's all kinds of like, I love when people say that, and then they're like, and then, and they want like the tied up bow happy ending, right? Now. It doesn't work that way. It got even messier. But right. I had to take that journey and come to a place where really 2 things. One is I stopped pushing up against, I don't want to be like this. And I don't want this for myself. And I had to start looking at, well, what actually do I want? Like if I'm not coming from resistance and I'm not coming from pushing away, like you said, running away from, what do I actually want? Like what is actually aligned with me? And then I had to face myself. Like you said, I had to face all the places where I wasn't giving myself permission to ask for that, to want that. And so that was the whole wake up call. And then I had to get to a place where I had to see how my mother's life was fulfilled for her, was enough for her. I had this whole belief going on that I didn't want to repeat that because I thought she lived this miserable life. But when I remembered back to what she was grateful for on her deathbed, I'm like, that was
for her. Yeah.
That was her journey. That was for her. And so I had to get to this place of real acceptance to stop pushing against it and then give myself permission, which, as I recall, my mom always gave me permission. Like my mom was the encourager of the parents. And my mother always say to me, go and do the things that I never got to do. Go do them. Like you're strong, you can do them. And so I made that my mantra. Yeah. So now I do the things like for her, not against her.
Yeah, I got it.
So that's the mom.
But in your way, like it's you and your choice.
In my way. And, I joke about and talk about the Italian culture because obviously that's where I'm from, but it's like, it doesn't matter what color, you could be Indian, Greek, doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. We have these cultural paradigms that are put upon us. And if we don't consciously choose otherwise, and again, not from a place of like, nah, I don't want that, but from a place of genuine, like, well, what do I want?
Yeah.
Then, I, as much as I pushed against it, ended up I was down the path to do the same thing.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
It took my mom dying for me to wake up and say, oh my God. Wow. So that was that piece around there. And when I talk about the course saving my life, if we fast forward from the trajectory of me, ending that suburgatory relationship, as I call it, and setting off on my journey and through more heartbreak and all this stuff, I found myself on the other side of the world in Melbourne, Australia, at the darkest night of the soul that I've ever had.
Wow.
It's actually what I'm writing about right now. And I had to wake up and acknowledge that I had been addicted to externals my entire life. And in particularly, I had been love addicted my whole life.
Wow.
And I don't mean love with a capital L, like we talk about in the course. I mean love with a small L.
Right.
And when I got to that place and I saw how I was using relationships and men and the outside to validate who I was, I had the darkest night of the soul where I was literally praying. I was begging God to take me in my sleep. I had enough loss. I had another devastating breakup. With grief, if you've ever experienced grief, it layers itself.
Right.
So you pick one scab and it seems like the cascade of all the other, things.
It's an unpacking process completely.
And so I found myself alone on the other side of the world, devastated again by a brutal breakup. And all the grief came back of my mother, that breakup, the breakup before, all of these things came flooding in, and I had to face myself like we just talked about.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was an addict and I was addicted to external validation.
Got it.
And I decided I was going to date God for a year.
So that's beautiful. I love that idea.
I'm like, that's it. God's I'm going to make him, I sometimes do that, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to make him a he for this purposes of this exercise. And I'm going to date him for a year because I realized I'd been spiritually practicing since I was 19. I saw my first healer. But I realized in that moment, I don't know crap. I haven't done anything. I've called myself spiritual, but I have no relationship to spirit.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to date God for a year. It turned out to be a little longer, which was great. But I did that and I dove into the course. The course had been following me around for years, but again, it was one of those things where it was like a beautiful paperweight. I'm like,
this huge book.
I'm just going to take it with me. I moved to Mexico. I took it with me there. I moved to Australia. I took it there. Like I was moving around with it. Somehow it was following me, but I wasn't actually doing it. And I decided to start doing it. And I was in so much grief and I was in the deepest, darkest depression. And after that dark night, I actually contemplated suicide. And by the grace of God, my sister called me in the middle of my plans and broke that fog.
Got it.
But I had to turn to the course. And I every day I listened to my Course in Miracles teacher on podcast, lessons on repeat, started doing the workbook lessons, started reading the text, started having a relationship. And it did save my life because I'm glossing over it for the sake of time, but I was in a bad way.
Yeah. No, I received that.
Facing yourself, right? So but thank you for asking.
No, thank you for sharing. I mean, I think this is the nature of this conversation because I want people to get that the things that we have to come through and overcome and face is what this is all about, and yes, I have it kind of wrapped in this conversation around entrepreneurship and that's who we are and that's what we do and what have you, but it's like the underbelly of all of that is who we are as human beings in the process. And what do we have to come through in order to find the next level of us, and the next level of what we do for the world. And if we wrap it in a business vehicle, great. But, and if not, that's fine too. Whatever the vehicle is, but we're human beings first. And it's like Brave is it doesn't matter what color, story, vehicle, like you can be doing whatever you want and Brave is still what is available to all of us.
Well, and I see it across the board. I mean, I have clients who are, executives, who are CEOs. I have clients who are surgeons. I have clients who are entrepreneurs, startup founders. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
The bravest thing you could do is face yourself. And it's actually, if we want to take it into the business side, like that's when I see the entrepreneurs specifically grow by leaps and bounds is when they face themselves, which is why I always giggle when my clients, like those clients call me a business coach. Cause I'm like, I'm not really kind of about your business, but it's really not about your business. Right. So, and they know, and they come to do that deep work, but it like, if you want to talk about ROI and dividends, like I see it consistently.
Right.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, it is tied. It's completely linked for sure. Yeah. And I love that we're cracking that code per se. We're cracking open that conversation because I just feel like it needs to be said more. Honestly, I follow a lot of web shows and things like that, web podcasts, what have you. I don't know whatever you call them. And so like mine, video shows on YouTube and these amazing guests that show up there, and the successful people like you and these guests and the people I have on the show, there is a common thread for how much they're willing to look at self and to have, a type of practice around it, and to, like that's actually priority over anything that you could possibly do, right? The actions that you could take.
Right. The 5-step plan or the whatever.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The 5 strategy plan. Right. And not that we don't have that. But I think and me included, I'm being really open. Like I had to come to this just, in the last year, recently, and recognizing my it's like you, like I've been spiritual. That's who I am, spiritual. Yet, and the course has totally been with me since 19. That's so funny. And it has literally followed me from house to house to house.
Great paperweight if you're not using it.
It's so good. And now I'm cycling back to it. I just read it this morning. Like, it's like something that you just don't let go of. But
and I always say to people too, like, there's this idea of like the come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. There's a lot of come to Jesus moments in your life. Like,
yeah.
And if you're, right. and it's almost like if you're doing it right, right, which there is no right, but it's like, you're in evolution. You are in flux. And if you could trust life, which I'm a firm believer, because I couldn't believe it until I did it.
Right.
But if you don't connect with spirit and your own higher intelligence, you cannot trust the process of life. And then you're just spinning your tail. Like you're just spinning. Yeah,
you're just going hamster wheel.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I just really love what you're up to and love the vision that you have and how you support people. So don't quit. That's all I got.
Well, you too. Right back at you, soul sister.
I'm with you. I won't. I promise. I'll call you when I get to the quit moment. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Me too. Right. I'm like, I tell my clients all the time, like, I figured it out to this point. I said, I'm still working on it too. Right. Like we're all a work in progress. Yeah.
We're still working. That's the whole point is that, like we get to own that. And so, I just really appreciate it and appreciate what you're up to. So.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I love how you said it's the awkward before the elegant, and and then we go back to awkward.
Right. It's just like that Bambi moment, right? A mentor of mine years ago said that to me, and it stuck because it's so true. It's always awkward before it's elegant, and then it gets awkward again, like you said.
Yeah, here it is again. So I mean, we, me and we could talk all day, but I definitely want others to connect with you. What's the best way for them to do that and get into your world?
Yeah, well, you could always find me at giovannacapozza.com. All my blogs and podcasts are there. Definitely connect with me on Instagram. It's under she_arises_podcast. And in Facebook, LinkedIn, I am everywhere.
Yay. You're doing your job right.
Yeah. Type my name and you'll find me. And like, I'm normally like, I'm on social posting, and that's where you'll get the updates about podcasts and new blog posts and stuff like that. So it's an easy place for people to connect. But if they need to contact me, personally, they can come to my website to the contact page.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I know that you'll be providing a training or something like that you want to gift to everyone. So we'll make sure that links in
Absolutely.
Well. So amazing. I appreciate that gift. Okay. So last question, right? I have to get a good one in. So imagine that this is your very last interview, never to be heard from again. I know it sounds so ugly, but it's like the emotion of that, right, is really powerful. Like if this is it, what would be the message to the world?
Oh, yeah, that made me emotional a little bit too.
I know it does, right?
It's like, God, there's so much to say. My biggest and most profound message, the one that chokes me up, is find yourself. Find yourself, and not the self that you think you are, not the self that other people think you should be, but the self with a capital S. find yourself. Because again, wrapping it back up to Unsettled, right? If you can be settled within yourself, if you can find that still small voice inside you, stuff just works better. Life works better.
It just works better. Everything shows up differently in a good way. I love that. Capital S. I love that.
Capital S.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your mother. Thank you for your come to Jesus moment, whatever, and many more.
All of them.
All of them.
And all the ones to come.
Yeah, exactly. And clearly, I suppose even my recent come to Jesus moment has brought me to you. So thank you for being a part of my life.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's all like, I get it. I get how it all shows up when we show up. So thank you for that. Thank you for crossing paths with me, and everyone listening to this episode, to this podcast, for crossing their path as well. So until we play again, I can't wait. But thank you for everything. And I just want to say to everyone listening, let's go get our brave on, and I'll see you on the next show.